Hey, baby. Hey there, I'm Bergeron, and this is Recycled Rhonda. This is a marionette that one of my students, Hope Bergeron, made. Not related to me, I swear. Anyways, I'm going to string this marionette for Hope, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So follow along. I'm going to show you some really quick, easy steps to string your marionette. It's not a difficult process. Let's get at it. You ready, Rhonda? No, she didn't call me baby that time. All right, here's what you're going to need to do this project. You're going to need a cup of tea or coffee. You're going to need your Darth Vader Pez dispenser and a backup Pez, probably two. You're also going to need something to measure with. So I have here, this is a 12-foot tape measure. That's lots. I have here just a regular metal ruler, whatever you have to measure with. And I'm going to use some of this green painter's tape and a pencil. And then you're going to have to decide, what kind of string it is that you want to put your marionette on with. Two different trains of thought. One is using white, one is using black. It depends if you want the strings to disappear into the background. It depends what kind of background you're working on. If you're working on a black background and you want your strings to disappear, then of course you're going to use a black string. If you're working on a white background and you want your strings to disappear, you're going to use a white string. I usually want my strings to be seen in most marionette presentations, so I usually use black. It's just a personal preference. This is a white paracord, so this is a really super heavy duty, thick string that won't tear or rip or anything. And this one is called, I believe this is called embroidery floss. So this is a little bit bouncier, not a whole lot more bouncier, but it's very black and it's really strong. Like you couldn't break this by hand. The other thing that you're going to need here to string your marionette is a pair of scissors. All right. So other than that, your marionette controller, string, something to measure with, a piece of tape, and a pencil. That's it. All right, let's get at it. Okay, this part is pretty easy. You're just going to need, really it's all pretty easy. You just need to know the steps to do it. But you're going to need something to write on, pencil or a pen, your measuring tape, your marionette controller, just some green masking tape, and of course you're going to need your marionette. So the first thing that you need to do, the first measurement that we have to do, we need a piece of green tape. So just get yourself off a little piece of green tape. It doesn't have to be very big. All right. So you're always going to perform with your marionette parallel to the floor. Okay. So you're not going to be working your marionette dragging down like this, and you're not going to work way up here. You're going to work parallel to the floor. So the first thing you want to do is hold your arm parallel to the floor with your marionette controller in whatever hand you're normally going to work with. And I'm going to use my left hand for this one. So I'm going to put a mark. I'm going to use the bottom. My measurements are always going to be from the bottom of the piece of tape. So I'm just going to put that on the wall. All right. That's where my marionette controller touches the wall. All right. So you're done with that. Set that aside. You're going to need another piece of green tape. All right. So for this one here, you're going to write my arm on that. All right. So the next thing you need to do is hold your marionette up so that she's standing on the floor, or he's standing on the floor. All right. And then put a piece of tape where the hook is on the top of her head. All right. Just like that. And then beside this one, put her, or I should say not beside this one, on the piece of tape, right, her head. Okay? Grab yourself another piece of tape. And then look at where her arm is, or where her arm is going to be held normally. This marionette's arm is going to be up fairly high. So her arm's going to be up normally about this high. So I'm going to put a piece of tape right about there where I want her arm to be, right? And I'm going to write arm, A-R-M. And then I'm going to need a fourth piece of tape. This is the last one. I'm going to stand her up again. I'm going to look at where the hook is on her knee, and it's right here. Okay, and I'm going to put a piece of tape. This one, it's right here. I'm going to put a piece of tape right there. So, see, is that pretty lined up pretty good? Get that out. That's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to set her aside, and I'm going to write on here knee. Okay, so then I'm going to write those things down in my sketchbook. So in my sketchbook, I'm going to write down my arm, and I'm going to write down her head, arm, and knee. And then I'm just going to simply measure. So now I'm going to measure from here to here, and I'm going to get 21 1/4 inches. So I'm going to write that down. 21 1/4 inches. And then I'm going to measure from my arm down to where her arm is going to be, and that's going to be about 33.5. 33.5. And then down to her knee. And that's going to be about 37 inches. Okay, so you may want to say, well, why is her arm way out there? Well, because I think this particular Marionette, when she's standing, I'm going to have her arm actually out like this. I'm not going to have her arm down at her side. Like we would normally stand with our arm at our side. She's going to be swinging her arm, she's going to be dancing and stuff like that. Okay, so her arm is actually going to be out at her side. Okay, so let's go and string her. Let's get it on. Okay, so all you're going to need for this part is your Marionette, your controller, your string with the scissors. You might need a piece of tape, and you're going to need your measurements that we just took. So these are my measurements. I'm going to set this over here so it's just out of camera, but I need to be able to see where they are. Let's talk about your Marionette controller for a second. My personal preference is that this cross bar faces down, okay? It's just naturally the way that the weight carries, okay? So where these two cross over, that's where her head is going to connect to your controller, okay? So I know for this particular Marionette, that's where I'm going to tie my string on first. So I'm going to just take this string, wet it a little bit with a little bit of gob, and I'm going to string that through that wire there. You can tie it on however it is that you have to get it tied on. All right, that's that. And I know from my measurements that from my controller down to her head is 21 1/4 inches. Okay, so here's what I'm going to suggest that you do. Take your string, take your tape measure, which is buried underneath her. Take your tape measure and measure out 21 1/4 inches from where you tied this knot on. Okay, so 21 1/4 inches is right there. Now don't cut it there because you have to tie it. Okay, so that's my spot. All right, so I'm not going to cut it there. I'm just going to take a piece of tape and put it on there. That's where the end of the knot has to be. So I'm going to need a couple of other inches here to tie. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of extra room there, and I'm going to cut this off. Now, one of the difficulties with this particular Marionette is that she has this hat. So I have to string through this hat before I tie it onto her head, okay? So I'm going to just wet this again, stick it in my mouth like that, and then stick it through there. And my big hand is too big to fit in here. Reach in there somehow and grab that. Got it. All right, pull that string through. So this goes onto her head, and of course I lost my I lost my piece of tape that I had put on there, but that's okay, we'll remeasure it. Okay, so then this gets tied onto her head. So I'm just gonna set her over here so you can see it. All right, pitch that piece of tape. So I need to measure again. I'm glad that you've seen that. Because sometimes you have to measure this like 15 times before you get it right. Anyways, I'm gonna measure from here down to the end of the string, pull it down tight. 21¼ inches is going to be right there. Set my tape measure aside, grab myself another little piece of tape, put that on there, and then we're just going to tie that onto her head, but we're going to tie it on not past where the tape is. Okay? All right. Not past where the tape is. So I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to make a knot. Of course, I'm going to speed this all up so you don't have to see me tying a knot, but essentially I'm going to tie a knot right down to where my green tape is. Then I'm going to tie it again. Now I can take my tape off. I'm going to tie it again. And maybe a third time. Now, if you weren't too sure about it, you may have wanted to only make one knot before you tied it on there permanently. I put it on there 3 times. So, and then of course you're going to want to try it to see if it's the right height. Okay. Pretty much the right height. Okay, so. All right, so that measurement worked out all right. So now the next one we're going to do is we're going to measure out to her knees, okay? So this particular Marionette, this is going to be the controller for the right knee, and this is going to be the controller for the left knee, okay? So now I know when I look back at my measurements, here, I see that that's 37 inches, okay? So you're going to want to do exactly the same thing. You're going to tie your string on here, tie your string on here. You need 37 inches, so you're going to tie this on here. And I'm just going to tie it at the end here. Remember, this is the down and dirty, easy, cheap way to do this. Normally I would put some hook eyes on here, or eye hooks on here, or something else. But this time I decided I was going to do it just as cheap and as simply as I possibly can. So I need to measure now from there, 37 inches. Remember, get yourself a little piece of tape so you can mark it on the string where 37 inches are. Okay. So from there, 37 inches of string. 37 inches seems like a lot, but it's really not. Right there. And then I'm going to make a mark. And then I'm going to add a couple of inches. So remember, you're always going to have to add a couple of inches for the knot. Okay? So. Okay, so once I have my 2 knees on here, so this is right knee, left knee, and I have my head on the center here. Okay, so my head's on the center, right knee, left knee. Now I need to do the arms. So the arms for me are going to sit on here, okay? So if you remember in my measurement here, I had 33.5 inches. That was the distance out to her arms, okay? So I'm going to tell you the way that I do arms for marionettes is I do one string that goes all the way up to here, and then it goes back down to the other arm. Okay, so it just floats here so that if I want it, I can just pick it up, or I can pick up one arm or the other arm, okay? So arm strings, you want to have one long string that connects both arms, and it just sits across here. So my arm number is 33.5. So just multiply your arm number times 2. So I'm going to make mine 67 inches. So measure out a piece of string that's 67 inches. Now that's my number. My number is 67 inches. Yours is going to be different. I'm going to measure out a piece of string that's 67 inches, and I'm going to tie it to both arms, and I'm going to loop it over here. Okay, and that's just going to sit over. So this loop is just going to sit over top of the controller. So I'll stand her up now and I'll show you what we did. I haven't tested it. Hopefully it's going to work, or I'm going to look really foolish on camera. I look really foolish all the time anyway, so nobody's going to know the difference. Let's stand her up. Okay, so here she is. I swear I haven't made any adjustments to her at all. And she looks fantastic. Her legs move exactly the way that I wanted her legs to. So when you rock this left to right, you'll move her legs. You can take the arm string and just hang it over the top of the controller here, and her arms just hang there if you want. And her feet move perfectly fine. You could twist her head if you wanted to, move her body around, however it is that you wanted her to move. She can walk, she can dance, she can swing her arms. Okay, so that's it. That one turned out really good, and I'm really appreciative of it. I hope Hope likes it. I hope that Hope Bergeron likes it. That's awesome. Anyways, if you learned anything from this video, please click like. If you're currently a subscriber, I thank you very much. And if you're not currently a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you. See you next time. All right, what do you think? Recycled Rhonda is ready for her show. Let's do it.